I just, for some reason in my head, imagine being like, they gave the boy a name, Douglas, like something like so ridiculous.
It's Bob.
Hello. Do you want to play a game?
What's your favorite scary movie?
Be afraid. Be very afraid. See dead people.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Here's Johnny.
The power of Christ compels you! The power of Christ compels you!
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
Welcome to Talking Horror with Jamie and Nikisha.
Hi, I'm Jamie.
And I'm Nikisha, and this is Talking Horror with Jamie.
And Nikisha.
Where we share our love for all things scary and talk horror through the lens of human behavior. Don't know why I said it like that.
I
Don't
loved
ask
it.
questions.
I loved it.
Just
I loved
go
it.
with it.
No questions. No questions.
Welcome, everyone, to the podcast. It's a special day, as every episode is a special day, because we're talking about horror, because we love it. But specifically, let me get my words together. Today, we're talking about the 2024 supernatural horror film, The First Omen. Woo.
We told my mom that we saw The First Omen, and she was like, "Oh, the one with Gregory Peck. I love that movie." And we were like, "We did watch that, but the movie is." So now you have to say like the original Omen film or the First Omen.
The
that's
prequel
fair.
named The First Omen.
Yes, yes.
Gregory Peck's Omen.
Yes.
Got
Totally.
it. That's so true. Well, The First Omen 2024, which is the quote-unquote prequel, this film was directed by Arkasha Stevenson, who also co-wrote the screenplay with one Tim Smith and a Keith Thomas. And this one is starring Nell Tiger-Free, Ralph Ineson, and Bill Nye.
Woo.
This is the woohoo. And this is the sixth installment in the Omen chain, and it serves as a prequel to the OG 1976 / Gregory Peck Omen.
That's crazy. There are 6 of these things.
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't know that there were 6 of them, and so in looking at this, I only thought it was the first 3, and then the remake.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was it. But Brian, what's the rundown?
Oh yeah, so there's the original trilogy, which is the Gregory Peck 1976 one. Then there's the Omen 2. Then there's the Omen: The Final Conflict. Then there's the Omen 4: The Awakening. It was a made-for-TV movie that takes place in this universe.
Okay.
And then in 2006 was the remake, as you mentioned, and then this one's number 6. But Sam Neill plays Damien as kind of an adult in the third one, which is like the end of that original trilogy and stuff like that. But
right.
Yeah, and then we get this one, which is which we'll talk about if we liked or not.
I'm also curious to know during that time if Damien as a baby name kind of went out the window. You know, kind of have like Jolene. You don't hear any more Jolenes because of Dolly Parton. It's like, was there a decline in the name Damien after the Omen came out?
Let's look it up.
There
We
had
can
to
probably
be.
find this.
There absolutely had to be a Damien shortage.
Ugh. So you don't want.
So when did the first one come out? Not the first Omen, but
1976.
Yeah.
So it actually was like on the little spike, and then didn't really go down that much, and it's kind of been consistent between it's number 304 in the US of popular names out of 1,000.
I wonder if the popularity of this chain kind of like disappeared. So I wonder if like people just don't care anymore. It's not like naming your kid like Jigsaw.
Oh, yes. Yeah. The ever popular Jigsaw.
Yeah, totally.
Or Pennywise.
Oh, but don't worry. There's other similar names on this, like Lucifer. How many people do you think are naming their child Lucifer?
Probably more than we think.
I agree. The same with like Lilith. or something, you know.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
Lilith was also on the list.
totally.
Yeah.
On
Satan.
Nameberry, it ranks as 251.
Yeah, that doesn't
That's a
surprise
poppin'
me.
name, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Lucy.
I mean, there's a lot of satanic cults out there. Like,
That's true.
You know.
Well, Jamie and I were saying we've seen a lot of. Maybe I'm getting too ahead of myself, but we've seen a lot of this. The three of us recently have seen a lot of this type of movie. Spoiler alerts, everybody! Spoiler alerts. We didn't get into that yet, but like,
Yes.
where like the end of the movie turns into some sort of like use the woman's body to give birth to Satan. You know what I mean? Like, Jamie and I watched The Last Exorcism. Spoiler alerts for that. Jamie and I watched. Well, all three of us watched the Ty West movie, the House of the Devil. There's a couple others. House of the Devil that we're thinking, but still, anyway, fun times, good times.
It's very good times. Just women being mutilated. It's always a fun time.
Yeah,
just vessels.
Yeah,
just vessels.
That's all we are. We're just like properties, you know. For
yeah,
people to do with
100%.
as they will.
And I'm glad they keep making horror films that show that. But if you want to follow us on social media, you can. You can find us at Talk Horror Pod on all social media. We're also on YouTube. Hi, YouTube.
Hey.
We're doing lists. We're naming different movies that we love. We're reviewing different movies on there. So check us out on things like TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk Horror Pod.
For some reason, when you said we're doing lists, I'm like, and checking them twice. It's like, what? What is that? Yes. But as producer Brian mentioned earlier, heavy spoilers for the First Omen. And I'm sure that we will also kind of talk about how it relates to the OG, the Omen, and some of the comparisons, because there was a lot of kind of shot-for-shot things that were happening within this. But trigger warnings, I think we need those. So, definitely. Jamie, could you please give us the trigger warnings for this?
Yes, this movie has to do with the church.
Yes.
It also has to do with Satan.
So much.
Oh, is he cool? Is Satan cool?
Hey.
Oh God! Yes.
So starting
if there's gonna be church, it's gonna be Satan. It's like one and one, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know. Yeah, like they have to, link hands and
the yin and yang of it all.
Yes.
You know.
Yes,
that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There is also, there's a lot of deaths. There's definitely some insides on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
We see some brains. We see some burns. We see some
vaginas.
Oh yeah, we see some vaginas. Oh, I want to talk about those vaginas and ratings. Yes. I'm making a note to talk about vaginas. Mm-hmm. You're gonna hear me say vagina a lot of times, so trigger warning for that, I guess. There's sexual assault. There is alcohol use, discotheque.
70s discotheques, yeah.
Mm-hmm. References to abortion, car accidents, a person who starts off as being whole and then ends up being in two parts.
Yes.
Oy.
Definitely.
Yeah. There's a hanging. I know I mentioned the burns.
Right.
There's a demonic jackal.
Oh, definitely.
Some stabbings.
Yes.
And
child abuse. There's also, I just thought of one. It's a huge one. There's skull injuries. There's weird pictures of children. Oh, there was a great one.
Oh, there's references to stillborns and miscarriages.
Yeah. And then I'll think of it. There's another big one that we didn't say that I totally thought of in my
pregnancy.
head. Yeah.
And, pregnancy and birth.
Yeah. I'll think of it. But
okay. Just shout it out whenever you...
Yeah. What'd you say?
Self-immolating.
No, I'll think of it. It'll come up.
All right. Well, have you guys, aside from watching all of these movies about women being torn piece to piece, piece by piece, have you watched anything else?
No, but I went to
What?
WrestleMania 40.
No, you didn't.
Yes.
And I watched it on TV.
Yeah.
Because it was in Philly.
Yeah,
and I'm
I went.
so mad I did not plan ahead to go. How was it? How'd you feel?
So I went to night 2.
Yes, okay.
With the big fight with Rhodes,
Right,
and
like
all
with
of
The
that.
Rock and Cody and
Cody Rhodes and The Rock, and I will say this: I have never watched a second of wrestling in my whole life.
Okay.
That was my first experience, like really. I just didn't grow up with it. My friends were into it, but my friend, shout out to Evan, who really wanted to go, took me and I'm here in Philly, and he spent the whole day explaining to me everything about the backstory of Cody Rhodes and how he left and started his own and came back, and who his dad was, and like what he represents, and then
He
how
talked about the other fights too. Like he prepped like all of them.
all of them. I knew everything that was going on. Like I understood why The Rock was the heel, and like what happened, and to flip everything, what Triple H's role is now, like and like that his heart condition stops from wrestling, like all this like cool, like very interesting stuff. So I walked in there not with the emotional intelligence or engagement, but totally with the like context of everything.
Yeah, you knew what the story was about.
Yeah. I had so much fun.
Yeah.
I've been to a lot of like high profile sporting events where the energy is high and people are excited and they end the way that people want them to end. Like I've been in Barcelona and saw Messi kick a penalty kick in front of me. I've been to like NFL conference championships and divisional championships. I've seen the Mets in the World Series, like all of that stuff. Nothing was more insanely loud than when the bell toll and everyone knew the Undertaker was coming out.
Oh my God. I was screaming in my apartment because I watched wrestling when I was a kid, and it just kind of fell off in that, like, you know, that like middle school pressure where they're like, wrestling is fake and like you shouldn't like it and it's not cool. And I felt like the peer pressure, so I like kind of disengaged. But man, hearing that bell, I literally like paused and was like, is that who I think it is? Also, he's so old. I was so excited that he like made his presence known. What a wild moment in like wrestling history.
But it was
wild,
really cool. I had a great time. I bought a t-shirt, and yeah, I mean, they're the most passionate fans around because what's and honestly, it was like a soccer match in that like nobody got up to get snacks or anything because everyone watched every second of every single match. There was very little room to like get up and go. People were there to watch this narrative. And
no one left early either, you said, right? Like people stayed like till the very end.
It took me like 2 hours to get home, and I live 15 minutes away because it's not like a baseball game where everyone leaves in the 8th inning, like if they're losing, and then some people trickle. Everybody left at like 11:30 when that thing was over, and it was just madness getting out of there. And the last thing that I'll say about it is what I understood but never fully engaged in and realized is wrestling is cool. Like, yeah, sure, we're watching them fight. It's very physical. Obviously, like, sure, it's fake, but like to an extent. And like everything is created as a narrative. It's basically having a favorite movie character and the movie never ends. Like, that's something that like, it's like if I love Captain Jack Sparrow, I wish I could see 1,000 Pirates movies. You know what I mean? I don't know why I use that as an example, but like,
it's a great example.
But like, you know, I would watch Johnny Depp play this character in every movie forever. Like, that's what The Undertaker is. That's what The Rock is. That's what
Triple H is.
That's Triple H.
John Cena.
Like, and they can just come back whenever. Like, Cody Rhodes, like Macho Man Randy Savage, like
Mhm.
Ric Flair. These are all just like characters, and it's so cool. And I was just like I'm still I'm going to be a fair weather wrestling. I'll watch WrestleMania 41. Maybe now that Netflix has Raw every Monday, like that might be a
Yes.
background type thing or whatnot. But realistically, like it didn't win me over to be an every Monday, every day fan, but I
sure.
absolutely gained a tremendous amount of respect for it. And even though you couldn't hear them in the ring and there were no announcers, like it was truly a magical, cool event. It is easily a top 5 live sporting event I've ever been to. And I did hear from a lot of people that WrestleMania 40 was like the best WrestleMania ever.
Oh, for sure. In a long time. Like they were comparing that one to when The Rock and Stone Cold had like their big match at WrestleMania, like
Mhm.
back in the early 2000s. And that was kind of like a pinnacle moment in WrestleMania. But no, that's true. Like I've never been to a WrestleMania, but I've been to wrestling like a Monday Night Raw, or like when it was Thursday Night SmackDown, now it's Friday.
Mhm.
And there are some matches where some people are like not as invested in, and so like maybe they'll go get a popcorn or whatever until like the main event of that night
Sure.
happens.
Like we missed one of the we waited on the merch line. We missed one of the full fights. Like
Okay.
and we missed LA Knight's fight. And like we were totally okay with that because I was actually watching it on Peacock while we were in line. This is
nice.
We are not sponsored by Peacock. But like
Yes.
I just like stuff like that. One thing I will add, Nikisha, is Evan said something to me that totally made sense. WrestleMania is the Super Bowl
Yes.
of wrestling, but everybody leaves happy. Like not half of your audience, like not like it's not like Chiefs fans leave happy and then the other fans leave sad. Like everybody leaves happy, even if the villain wins. Like you got a really good narrative, and that's not the end. The season doesn't start over. Like there's Monday Night Raw, what's gonna happen? There's Friday Night
What's gonna
SmackDown,
happen?
there's Raw again, there's another big event. Like it's super cool. I was very much converted that night.
Yay! I'm so happy. That's so exciting that you got to experience that, because it is a once in a lifetime, like with the deep fans. And I'm like Jamie, I kind of fell off. But during the pandemic, I randomly just started back watching whatever matches they would post on YouTube. So then I would get back into like, okay, well, who is this? And like, oh my gosh, their women's roster is stacked. Like,
oh yeah,
full of people.
The women's fight was awesome. Also,
Yes.
I love that Triple H has them speaking in their native language, and like with the subtitles, like all of that is super, super cool. Oh, also, really, all wrestling is like very avant-garde theater.
It is. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone has their costume.
It's
like,
weird.
Who's the villain? Who's this? It's a soap opera too.
Yeah,
like
it's great.
Yeah,
it's great.
This
Anyway,
has been WrestleMania.
Yeah, parlor talk. Yeah, that's 100% what this is.
Come, sit, have a drink. It's parlor talk.
I could go on about it, but I know we have to talk about the First Omen. But I'm so glad you had a good experience. So
I did.
maybe
I
next
was so
year
excited
we'll all
to
go.
tell you.
Yes.
It's in Minnesota next year.
Oh, okay. I'll figure it out. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's get into the First Omen, but we need a plot summary. So producer Brian has to do some more speaking and give us a plot summary.
me.
2-minute plot summary of this. I think you can do it in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I do too. I do too.
Yeah.
What's the plot?
All right. I almost said Professor Brian.
That's me.
Professor.
I'm the plot
Producer
professor. I'm the
Brian.
plot professor.
Yes.
All right, plot professor. You have 2 minutes on the clock. Your time starts now.
Okay, so we have Father Brennan, who is the same character from The Omen who gets actually the thing through his head, but they just cast a new actor in it. And he basically finds out first information about Skiana, who is a woman who was assaulted by the devil jackal and gave birth to a woman. Then we cut to Rome in 1971. We have Margaret is her name, or something like that, and Margaret is basically this new nun who's going to a orphanage to kind of help out. She's very good friends with the Cardinal Lawrence, played by Bill Nye. He was with her in Massachusetts. Anyway, she goes there to like finish her nunning or whatever it is, and then she becomes very connected and cares for this kind of troubled orphan at the orphanage. And then weird, crazy things start happening, just like in the original Orphan, where somebody says it's all for you and hangs themselves. People start dying left and right. Because what happens is the Ralph Ineson character, Father Brennan, goes to her and basically is like, hey, this girl Carlita is the spawn of the devil. You need to turn her in and help me get her out and like figure out what's happening. So anyway, Margaret realizes that this is the case, and there's a lot of other things that happen too, at like a discotheque and stuff like that, where she kind of figures out what she, who she wants to be. She has a roommate who kind of takes her out like to be an actual teenager and stuff like that. Anyway, in the end, we find out that Margaret is actually one of the spawns of the devil, along with Carlita. They've been trying to produce a boy, but they've only produced 2 healthy girls. Carlita is one, and Margaret's the other one. And since Margaret's older, they brought her to here, and basically they inseminate her with the jackal, and she gives birth to twins, Damien, who they give to the Robert Thorne, the character from the why can't I think of his name in this? We just said it, Gregory Peck's character. And then there was another girl. She escapes. She kills the cardinal. She escapes and lives on a mountain like Dexter. And then Ralph Ineson comes back to her and is like, they named your kid Damien. Like, they're coming for you. End of movie.
Yes.
There's a lot. Actually, now that I like go through it, I should have spent more time on plot, because there actually is a lot of plot in this. But that's the basics of it, I guess.
And that's the plot.
Talk about the deaths and stuff.
Yes, we'll talk about all the deaths. We'll talk about the journey to how she found out that she was a part of this and all of that. So let's get into it with our first segment, Likes and Gripes.
And now our likes and gripes.
So who would like to start? Woohoo!
I'll go first if no one minds.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Woohoo!
I really liked this movie a lot.
Mm.
I thought this movie was great. I think that the First Omen is the best of these, like, let's reboot a franchise movies. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's the only one that maybe compares is the 2018 Halloween. But it's better than like Bloodlines, Pet Cemetery. It's way better than Exorcist Believer. There's a couple other ones that like kind of fit that mold, but
Or like Children of the Corn. No.
yeah, this
Pass.
one to me was its own unique thing. This one tried to be its own, have its own identity, while still, connecting to the other one. But like, seeing the original one is just a cherry on top. It does not necessarily inform your experience with this movie. And I really appreciated that about this movie. It has a clear personality from its director. It takes leaps. It has images I'll never forget. It has character scenes that I'll never forget. So some of my likes with this one are related to a lot of that. I thought that Nell Tiger Free was incredible in this movie, highlighted by her kind of the baby forming in her body sequence when they were going to get the abortion. I think that uncut shot is just like truly amazing acting. It was engaging. It was terrifying. I thought she did an amazing job of making us connect with that character. Even though one of my dislikes is the movie is very predictable. It's going to be her. But the way that the movie reveals all of that and making the connection between Carlita or the younger girl and her was really cool. I really liked the cinematography of this movie. I thought the music was excellent. I thought that I think there's 2 or 3 where they get a close up of Margaret's eyes and then they cut to black. And it's like black for like 10 to 15 seconds. And it just, your heart is pumping. It's making you like really like take in what you just saw, the images, the emotions, and then it kind of restarts you. I thought that was really well done, highlighted by the one in the club where she starts to lick the guy like the demon was licking in her flashbacks and stuff like that. These are split-second images that are like very clear, that are super cool. I thought that Ralph Ineson as Father Brennan was awesome, and I did not care that he was playing the same crazy person from the original Omen that breaks into his office, and that gets killed by the pole in the original one. Didn't mind that. I thought he was, but that's another part of this movie making it its own, which I really appreciated.
Yes.
I thought that the twist was great and how they presented it, and I thought that specifically that vagina scene. And it wasn't even the last shot of the hand coming out of the vagina. What it was to me is every time that they cut to the woman's lower half. That first shot was the pregnant belly with just like a little bit of leg. Then the next one, like under the leg, but it just misses the vagina. And then the next one is like, oh my God, they're just like, they're like literally filming around it. And then they have a dead-on shot of it. I thought the like visual reveal of that and pacing of that was just awesome, ending it with a very shocking image. I thought that was just like spectacular.
Yeah,
Good vagina shots. Good
Good
vagina
vagina
shots.
It was.
Yeah.
It's like a little peep. It was like a little peep show, like you said. Just like, are they? Will they? Won't they? And but I do want to hear what Jamie had to say about vagina since we're already here. Jamie, could you share what you wanted to talk about?
We're pulling into Vagina Station.
All aboard the vagina train. Let's go.
Oh boy. Yeah, so I agree with everything Brian said. And I was thinking about like the rating situation with this movie. This movie's rated R. And I know I always like to bring that up just in terms of what audiences are they trying to appeal to with ratings and things like that. A lot of horror movies are PG-13. So my understanding is when this movie first made it to the MPAA, I don't know how I added so many extra A's, but however, yeah, that one. So my understanding when it first went to the MPAA is that they actually landed an NC-17 rating. And so like hearing that and then how they had to do some editing to get down to a rated R, that like they wanted to go for like the rated R. And my guess is that it was around the vagina scene, like being able to include that, because it is really like pushing the envelope, and I appreciated that they went there. But I'm just going to throw a minor gripe in alongside that. I think that because it is important to the story, I think, between her hallucinations and like the theme, or I mean, like this movie is about like birthing the Antichrist, that having that is like the scary jump scare.
Yes.
I don't think people are expecting to see a vagina in this movie. And so like the way that they kind of show you like piece by piece and then the whole thing like is a jump scare. But at the same time, I think that then they had to compromise on some of the other death scenes in this movie in order to keep it at rated R, not push it to NC-17, where like that would not have worked for them. And there was no other way to compromise on not having the vagina scene, if that makes sense.
That's one of my gripes too, Jamie. I thought that some of the main death scenes we got in this movie, which is the opening with Tywin Lannister, the burning yourself and hanging yourself at the same time, the person getting crushed by the car, and then the top half of the body coming off, Like
Mhm.
all of those were excellent.
Yes.
And then we got the car crash at the end, which was
Mhm.
lame. Like
Yeah.
I needed somebody to fly out that windshield, or like
Yeah.
that. It just felt like, even though that scene was really about her getting out of the car and like her like it forming in her uterus and then her water breaking, like
Mhm.
I needed something a little bit more gruesome to happen to the driver and her accomplice, because we know Father Brendan's going to survive because he's in the original Omen movie.
Right.
Like,
Right.
so I needed something gruesome, like even if they're shredded by the car glass or something like
Mhm.
that, to like kind of like cap that sequence a little bit for my taste.
Oh, fair. Yeah.
But
'Cause-
I also think that like the other thing is so many of the deaths in this are paralleling or updated versions of deaths from the
From the
original
first one.
70s
Yeah.
Omen. So
Yeah.
like we're getting a like a foreshadowing of Father Brendan in the beginning with the
Mhm.
pipe splitting the back of the head. It's just slightly different, and we actually see like brain. We're getting, I mean, we get nearly the same kill at the orphanage, except for some reason she's lit on fire,
Right.
which was like an escalation.
Yeah.
And then we're also getting, like, instead of a decapitation, we're getting someone cut in half. So
Right.
like
Mhm.
we're getting, we essentially got the same major kills that we got from the original, just done
Sure.
slightly differently.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
I also wonder, like, like, I don't know, was there an intention to include more gore, like
Morer?
Morer.
or was their focus simply to update the existing ones as like a tie back to those?
Sure.
So I kind of wish that I agree with you that I liked the updated kills, but I do kind of wish that they went a little bit outside of the box and did some other things, because then I'm just like, what, this devil only got like 3 tricks and that's it?
Yeah, you
Like,
know, the
Mm,
dog
that's all
in
you
this
got up
one.
your sleeve? You got nothing
Mhm.
else? You can't like
Mhm.
switch it up, make it more exciting? So like
Yeah.
that, I don't know, I just I wanted it to just be something slightly different.
Sure.
So that just kind of, I wasn't like disappointed per se,
No.
but I think I just expected something. I wasn't expecting the same thing. We already got 2006, which is essentially just a remake, so it seems
Mhm.
weird that they would like just slightly update the existing kills when we already have gotten a remake of this movie.
Yeah, I will also say that this is a nitpick for me because of how much I really like the plot and the way the movie was made. Like,
Mhm.
these kills totally suffice in this narrative, but also, like, you know, I wanted a little bit more. But that, to me, that's okay. That's not going to affect my grade of this movie, if you will.
Yeah, agreed.
Absolutely.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to. That's vagina talk.
Totally. That's
Yeah.
been vagina talk.
Yes.
Some other things that I really liked about this movie. I real You know me. I love a movie that like gives us context in terms of history. And I really like that they featured all of those protests, the left wing
Mm.
protests,
Mhm.
and just like this, one of my gripes is that it's very heavy handed in how they explain it thematically, where he's
Mm.
like, you know, going back to God and this thing, but that actually ends up tying into the plot. So I was okay
Yes.
with that. In the moment, I was like, "Oh, you're gonna explain this?" Like, yeah, I get it. But at the end, because it ties in of why they need Damien or why they need the Antichrist, I like really appreciated it. I thought that sequence coming out of the museum, with the protest in the courtyard, with her freaking out, I just
Yes.
thought so many of these sequences were so well, like, paced and really brought out the anxiety of that moment. Like, and I just thought they really did an excellent job.
I
Some,
also
Mhm.
oh no, sorry, just in that same scene
yeah,
too, the perspective change.
yeah,
So
Mhm.
like seeing the demon, like seeing what Margaret is seeing, but then like the nun looking and seeing Margaret just like freaking out because she doesn't see a demon. I just thought
I
that was really cool to include both of those point of views.
I love a
Yeah.
good point of view change like that.
Mhm.
Yes.
I thought all that was great. I also want to shout out some of the jump scares in this are really good.
Mhm.
Specifically the one with her outfit behind her, and then the curtain goes in front of it, and
That was
then
one of my favorites.
it was really well done.
Even
Because
though
you kind of know it's gonna happen.
You know it's gonna happen,
and it
you
still
know it.
got me.
Mhm.
Like that I think is like what makes it super effective. It's like the slow pan, the lingering on the shot, like you said, the curtain a few times, then we get it fully covering the screen, and then bam,
Yeah,
it's good.
But that's the tension building of it all, which I
Yeah.
think this movie also did a
Yeah.
very good. And Brian, you mentioned this too, in a lot of different places. I feel like that was also apparent in the opening scene too, with them trying to put up the stained glass picture,
was
and
great,
you like
wasn't
you
it?
know
Yeah.
it's gonna fall.
Totally.
Who is it gonna fall on? Who's gonna
Mhm.
die? But how they dragged that out to where you're just like, when is it gonna happen? Is it happening yet? They're kind of home free. Like, what's
Yeah.
gonna? And then it, So
Or
yeah,
her in
this was
the in the
great for that.
bad room, in the
Oh
dark.
yeah,
And you
that
like
was
hear
great.
what she's like, this isn't real, and then she hears, what isn't real? And I'm
Right.
like, oh no.
So good. That
Oh
was
my god.
there was just some. Our audience was not the best behaved in the movie theater, yet I was
Oh.
still deeply engaged, and it really didn't take me out of it because of how well paced this movie was. And just when you think it's going to get a little bit slow, the narrative plot is interesting, really
Yeah.
interesting, in fact. And like when they're going through the papers at the end, and when she sees the 666 in under the mouth and the palate, like that whole like last 20 minutes is like really great stuff. I like the twist at the end that Damien has a twin. I thought that was really interesting. And at the end of the day, this movie really makes me want to see another one in this universe, which is crazy. This was this is a dead franchise, a dead chain, and like all I want to do is like see like how Margaret and like Carlita and her daughter like can like influence things. Like that's
I
so
would too.
so cool.
I would be invested in that for sure.
Absolutely. That
Give it to me,
Give it to
movie
me now.
producers.
I have two questions for the group. My party time.
Balloons!
My first question for the group is, in that scene that we were talking about where the dress kind of comes to life, did you realize that there was a mirror next to the dress? Because when she puts the dress on the hook and then walks away, her reflection shows up briefly because it's next to a mirror. I did not know there was a mirror there, so I thought someone was walking across the room, and that made me jump. But it was just her. It was just her reflection, because in other establishing shots of the room later on, they show the mirror on that wall. So
Yes.
I got jump scared by something that was not supposed to be a jump scare. Did anyone else have that experience or no?
I don't think so. I don't remember seeing the
No.
mirror. I don't remember seeing the mirror next to the dress. I thought the mirror was on the other side of her bed, the left side of her bed.
I
The
don't.
dress was on the right.
No, I don't remember at all any of that. Just the dress being hung up.
There was something else. I don't remember my second question. It'll come to me. But I do just want to point out, I hate a move. I love and hate a moment where like like at the end when she's holding the baby and like has the knife and just can't do it. I get it. In the moment, I understand it. And I also know as an audience member that it's not going to happen, or X, Y, and Z won't happen. But like, damn, it makes me so mad when they can't just like do the thing.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, but it's, what is, that scene is harder to kill that baby than in the OG, the Omen, and him trying to kill the baby, only because like this just came out of this mother's body. And so I can understand the reaction of like not wanting to kill, even though you're supposed to, and but it's mostly just because like she's still the mother of this child. Whereas the father, who has nothing to do with the birth of the baby, like had a hard time doing it. And it's like, no, this is not your kid. Like, come on, it's make this happen.
No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And then at the end, when he's like, they gave the boy a name, Damien. I just, for some reason in my head, imagine be like, they gave the boy a name, Douglas, like something like so ridiculous.
It's Bob.
Yeah, Bob. They gave the boy a name, Frank. Like, like something like. Anyway,
They gave the boy a name, Daxton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I loved this. I thought this was great.
Yeah. No, I'll piggyback off of that, Brian, because you already said a lot of the stuff that I liked about it. I had a really good time watching this, more so than I think I've had in a while of some of the newer horror movies that we have watched. So
Agreed.
that was really nice. Do I think it could have gone a little further? Yes. I also thought a gripe was like always, but a gripe was also that I thought it was a little too long. I thought that 2 hours was just a little bit too much. They could have I don't know what they could have cut, but I feel like they could have cut some things.
Sure.
I really enjoyed the 70s kind of aesthetic cinematography that happens at the opening, and just like how it's filmed, and it makes you feel like it's being filmed like in the time period that it's actually in. We all talked about the picture and the slow motion of the picture falling, like that had me anxious, that whole scene. I loved it. The use of shadow in this too was fantastic, especially in the introduction of Carlita under the bed drawing.
Yeah.
And then like kind of coming up on the side or like coming underneath, I just really thought that how wide the shots were, so to where you could see a lot of the shadows of things moving along, just was very helpful in informing the tone of the movie. So I really, really enjoyed that. The vagina, yes, loved all the things in that scene. I did enjoy the leveling up aspect of some of the deaths, like with the burning before the hanging. And I really, really liked the fact that Father Brennan actually just said what was happening, as opposed to in the first OG one where it was kind of like, repent of your sins.
Yeah.
Like
this Father Brennan is so much better than that Father Brennan.
So much better. And it was just like straight to the point. It's like, look, this is what's happening. If you want to know more, meet me here. And then it's like, okay, you have something to work off of, not like this whole ethereal, woo-woo of it all.
Totally.
Which just reminds me, like, return the slab from Carrot to Carly Dog, like every time. But the choir music I also thought was fantastic. I love a good creepy choir. And so anytime that they had like a little creepy choir, like that was amazing. A gripe I had was the fact that, girl, you never like touched your head to feel that there was something there.
That's always, I agree. I think that's why I think that's why they gave her really long hair on purpose. Like, I think it was supposed to be like caught under there. 2, did anybody think of the Kardashian Instagram photo with the hearts in the hair when she was laying on the bed after the night out? And her hair was like her hair was supposed to be like a spider web or whatever it is, like whatever. But it reminded me of that Valentine's Day Instagram that I forget which Kardashian did it, where all the hair strands were in little hearts around their head.
Oh,
it's like one of the most liked Instagram photos of all time.
Really?
It's not Kim. It's Courtney.
Kendall.
It's Kendall.
Kendall. Mm-hmm.
Can
Yeah.
you put it in our group chat? I just want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I thought of. Anyway.
Oh, fantastic. I also thought that was really cool too, just to kind of have that like experience of going out and the after of it all, like the hungover, but then have the little spider kind of creeping around on her face while also having the hair like a little spider web. I thought that was very very cool.
I loved that discotheque scene. Not every movie can do this like contemporary young person sequence well. Like, I think that Black Swan does it pretty well. Like, when usually scenes like that happen in a movie where someone has one vocation or has one goal, whether it's Saint Maud where she goes out for that night of drinking, whether it's this one where she goes out Black Swan, super dedicated, and then goes out with Mila Kunis. Like, some movies do it really well. Other movies waste that opportunity. And with this movie, I just thought the pacing, the reason for it, the thematic pieces of it were just like fantastic. And it really had a visceral experience, which is why that cut to black afterwards was even more effective.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. Absolutely. So many cuts to black, which is like, what's happening? What's
Yeah.
going on? I loved the explanation of the why they were doing what they were doing, like you said, Brian, with birthing the Antichrist and trying to bring people back to the church, because it's very just kind of like relatable with how the church is trying to control things now. So I just thought it was very kind of, on the nose of being relatable. Yeah.
Also, from an exposition standpoint, I feel like you and I, like the three of us, I mean, like have watched so many movies lately where they convolutedly explain the plot in 3 sentences, and we come on this podcast and we're like, let's talk this out.
Yes.
I completely understood what was happening in this movie.
Exactly.
They paced it, or the screenplay really allowed the actors to say what was happening without like confusing us as an audience member.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that as a whole, you understood exactly what people's intentions were, like why people were making the decisions that they were making, and it just made for an overall more just understanding of what's happening.
Yeah, and visually too, like when she sees
yeah.
the photo for that first time and she like turns it over and like just kind of runs her hand across the like ripped off part, and then when she sees the ripped off part in that, like as an audience member, because of that 1 second shot 30 minutes earlier, we could put the pieces together along with them. It was just really excellent direction.
Yeah. Yes, this was excellently directed for sure. And the last thing I'll say is kind of a director thing of the shot. I loved the shot when Margaret is, I think it might have been after her night out, and she's kneeling with all the candles and she's praying, but the candles look like kind of teeth.
Oh, the
flames. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Really cool. Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
I like that.
I can't wait to see what this director, what she comes out with next. This was like superior stuff for a debut feature-length film.
Yeah.
Which I guess I didn't realize that was their directorial debut, but for a feature film. But yeah, excellent. I really had a great time watching this. Like I said, more so than a lot of the other stuff that we have seen. Like I felt anxious. I felt scared. I was invested in what was going on. There was a lot of visually beautiful things that were happening. And even though I sometimes was like, oh, this is a little long, I still had a really good time of, how the story played out, and especially all the deaths, because that's what this is about too. It's like you got to make sure that those are handled correctly, and I think that she did a great job. So
yeah,
those are my likes and gripes. Jamie?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the both of you. This movie is really fun. I not really a gripe with this movie, but just like the other horror movies that have come out this year, I was very annoyed when like I kept seeing things that were like, The First Omen's the best horror movie of 2024, and I was like, don't frame it like that, because everything else has been garbage. So like you're setting the bar really low with
Also
that. But I like genuinely thought that this was really fun, really well made. Again, like really pushed the limit of like some of the other things that have come out so far. There have been other things that have come out that we have not yet seen, but I would say like for some of the earlier stuff that came out this year, like in January, February, has been kind of so. So I was like, great, we're cooking with gas, and like excited to kind of move forward through the rest of the year, because there's a lot of other things that I feel like are looking really good, and hoping that is the case. We talked about a lot of the scenes that we really liked. I want to mention, I don't think either of you mentioned the scene where her roommate, is it called like taking the cloth? What is it called when you're like becoming a nun formally?
Oh yeah, like yes, taking up the cloth. Yes,
yeah. That scene where her roommate's going through that process, I really liked that scene, because it's also it's interspersed with with Margaret like making the discovery about the files and like being
Yes.
sneaky. But like I was like, okay, I know what she's doing. Like she's being sneaky. She's gonna get the files, whatever. I want to pay more attention to like this weird like
This ceremony.
initiation thing that's happening. Because I mean, I did not grow up Catholic. I like there are some things that I do know, but like I'm also not a nun, so I can't speak to that experience.
Go on
either.
more about that.
But like I did not realize that it was like, you know, you're marrying God, so like she's literally dressed like a bride, and then there's this like weird tension where they're dressing her in the nun costume, or it's not the costume but the outfit.
Yeah.
And like they're like yoinking the headpiece on her face, and it's really like like pulling her back. Just like all these weird little subtle things that like made me very uncomfortable watching it. And then you get her at the end when she's like fully clothed up. She like gets down on the ground, like lies down, makes a cross with her body, and is like you know, hugging the floor. And then all of the other nuns like get up and follow her in suit, and like it's so bizarre. And then they're all like whisper chanting.
Yes.
What a deeply unsettling moment in that movie, where I was like, what the hell is going on? Again, like even though like Brian said, I think that the story is fairly predictable, that was just like a totally weird thing that I was like, this is wild. That kind of really
invested.
like yeah, like again, it's those things where it's like, yes, I know she's gonna like discover the paperwork, and that's gonna like prove this, and like then she's gonna learn stuff, but like we see that in every movie. Show me more weird nun stuff. I want that. That was really interesting.
Yeah, that was
That
really
should have been the plot of The Nun, just them doing
weird
nun stuff.
Weird nun stuff.
Yeah, and then again, like just shout out to Margaret. I could have watched her like transformation possession scene outside of the church like for 1,000 minutes.
Yeah.
It was so bizarre and unsettling, and I ate that shit up. I loved watching that scene. She was really excellent, and again, I think like this really shows you how, despite the story being somewhat predictable, that an actor can still really like just emulate this character and this part so effectively that you genuinely believe the performance. Like I believed her like working really hard to compartmentalize her childhood experiences and like the trauma that she went through, and like really telling herself that like her hallucinations were not real, and like doing all of that to get to this place. I like genuinely believe that, because like her then kind of coming to terms with the fact that she herself, her connection to Carlita, right? That was her name.
Yeah.
Her connection to her was more than just like, oh, you know, I was also a bad kid when I was growing up, but like there's clearly more there. But like you really buy into not just that she's seeing that in her, but like all these other shared experiences and what's going on, and then like making these connections, and still being like very devoted to wanting to help her, even if it means like putting herself at risk. Like it was just, she just did such a good job at like taking all of that on. And I just really like, again, major shout out to Nell Tiger Free for like putting on such a great show in this. I was just like I was really bought into her performance in particular, which I think is like part of what makes this movie so effective. I mean, like there's excellence in the acting in this, and like the people that they chose, I feel like was really thoughtful, and they all really brought this like, I mean, like all of the like priests, cardinal, etc., like really brought this like intense energy in a variety of ways, and like brooding, but like if I ever see Ralph Ineson like approaching me with that look in his face, like I know bad news is about to come. Like
Yikes.
It was just like all it was just like so it was really impactful, and I feel like that really helped this movie for like, what is otherwise like, I think we've seen these plot
These kinds of
these plot
yeah.
points.
Also, like, to Jamie's point, like, Bill Nye's going to be the bad guy in the end because you don't cast someone like that to be like the friendly cardinal up front.
For
He's not just
sure.
like the casual friendly cardinal. That being said, like, that's part of the predictability of it, like, still being a good movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But also because of the way that he's portraying it, because it's not, it's the, the idea that like this is happening amidst these left-wing protests, you then are seeing folks on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So it's like you're seeing someone who's so caught up in this idea of like the church needs to be in this position of power, and we will go through whatever lengths necessary in order to maintain that power, and you like believe that to your core. You're not able to see the like the the horror in your wake. Like he's framing it to her like, of course I care about you, like I made like I took care of you this whole time. Like everything he's saying to her isn't like, yeah, fuck you, now I finally got you. It's very much like, no, like I care so deeply for you to make sure that you made it to this moment, and like it's so important, and I'm so happy that it's you, and all of this stuff. It's like that is very much, like someone who is fully bought into his rationale, his belief system, and that's what makes him so scary. And like, again, very effective performance. But yeah, like that, I just, it's an interesting take that like, the church is actually responsible for creating the fear and the big bad in order to in turn like bring people back to it. And not being able to like, I mean, that's like cognitive dissonance, is like there's this complete disconnect of like, perhaps you are doing the bad thing. Perhaps you are actually responsible.
You can't just say, oh, to deal with the evils, like we're gonna do evil as a church. It's just kind of like, why would that be kind of the go-to? Unless you really are just wanting power and control, and it's not about what the basis of the faith is. It's about just controlling people.
It feels very like Old Testament-y, like
oh,
kind
for
of
sure.
like an eye for an eye vibe, where it's like, oh, we gotta meet this with the same energy, and like that's
but
like
the Antichrist. Come on,
like
guys.
that's where we have to.
You do what you gotta do.
We're gonna go that far off the deep end. Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Do you have any more likes and gripes, Jamie?
No, I think that's it.
Oh, can I say one more thing?
No.
I found it shocking that the driver wasn't a bad guy.
Oh yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
Same.
If the church hired him to drive her around, there's no way he wasn't spying. That didn't feel real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that in some way there was going to be a reveal that he was like a part of them.
Yeah, for all we know, he was, and that's why they were able to get the car. But he seemed surprised. He seemed like he was on their side. They even that line where it's like, "Oh, don't worry, the driver's on our side." Like, I don't know. There was something that didn't click with that in terms of like that. He was probably spying for the church, but then he wasn't. Okay, sure. I know it's a minor thing, but that stuck out to me.
It was either like him or like the guy friend that she was trying to, it's like one of those has to be
right.
Yeah, I actually maybe because I can't like I think sometimes I have a hard time like recognizing similar faces, but there was someone at that end scene when she was giving birth that looked like the friend. And that looked like the other guy when there was like, they were panning across all of the faces of like the evil like nuns and priests. One of them looked like him. And then I was like, no, I thought he died. But then I couldn't tell and couldn't remember anyway. So I was like, maybe it's just another guy.
Yeah,
but I was like, I didn't even remember seeing this random guy. How many guys were just like in and around this place?
They just had enough clokes, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to come watch the Devil?"
They had extra cloaks, and they were like,
It's
"Oh,
like
we're coming to watch this really cool thing. You want to come?"
Well, that seems like what happened with that boyfriend guy, because we didn't talk about that. Like,
oh yeah,
the guy that she met at the club, and then he ends up being a part of the whole thing in general.
But
like,
I don't think he wanted to be there. The facial expression when we have that like when we revisit that trauma that she went through, which also I thought was like you know me, I don't need those things. Like, we don't need to like revisit sexual assault.
Oh, for sure.
I just think that's like a poor, uh tool to use in horror movies. But when they're panning across all of those people, he looks so uncomfortable, and like that they had to like pull him into it. But I don't think that he was genuinely a part of it.
Yeah,
That was my
because he
impression.
even says like check the scar, like when he would the check the mark or whatever it is. It seemed like he was coerced into doing it,
Yeah.
or there's definitely something more there that we never got the full story. But it didn't feel like he was just like a part of it. Maybe like he's an Italian boy who lives with his mom. He said like he might have a very very moldable mind when it comes to working with the church. He thought he was doing something good. Like there's a lot of things I'm okay with that because my mind is filling in the gaps, so it doesn't feel like a plot hole. Whereas
Okay.
like the guy driving, like no way, he was fine for sure.
Okay,
was
so
bad.
then here's my question: when was she impregnated?
That night,
So
That night.
at the night of the disco.
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
because the roommate brought her there on purpose, getting her drunk, knowing what was going to happen to her. I'm just not totally sure on like how the guys fill in. Were they
Yeah.
told something different? Did she coerce them into something? Did the church? Were they plants? Were they not plants? Did
Yeah.
were the guys just the ones that there, and then like the church took them at the end, and they paid them off? I don't know the answer to any of that, but I'm willing to believe that there's more of an interesting explanation there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Especially like the whole connection of trying again. I guess they were just making sure that the baby who lived, Margaret, like survived long enough to be old enough to give birth, but also was still kind of like trying to get a boy. And I guess that's how they got Carlita in the midst of that too. Yeah. Okay. I'll buy it. Fantastic. Well, let's move on to our next section. Brains. Tasty. Okay, so my first question to you, Jamie, is do you think that the bond between Carlita and Margaret, and you kind of hinted at this in your likes and gripes, but would you consider that to be trauma bonding? And if that is trauma bonding, can you just talk about in general how a person can kind of distinguish that is their connection with someone, in hopes, to kind of take a step back and be like, oh, okay, the only reason we are bonding is because of this trauma. Like, let's actually try to bond from other things.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with,
yes,
that's actually, so I think that the phrase trauma bond or trauma bonding is misunderstood often.
Grand.
So trauma bonding is more or less a relationship between like a perpetrator of abuse and like the person that they're victimizing. So it more often than not you see it in intimate partner relationships, but it can be in other types of relationships too. But it's based on like the cycle of power and abuse. So it's like reinforced by like there is positive reinforcement happening, and then something happens and there's like something negative happens, and then it's followed up with positive reinforcement. So that's trauma bonding. But I think that like I understand why people often frame this like shared experience over trauma and call that trauma bonding, because that's kind of what that phrase sounds like. I don't think there's like a better way to define that. The best thing that I could come up with is like collective trauma. Like something that like at least two, if not more people have like experienced together. And like because of that shared experience that like there then builds a connection between two people. But yeah, that's something that like I think even I don't even think I had ever heard of the phrase trauma bonding in all of the intimate partner violence work that I've done in the past. But it is interesting that like it's becoming a more popular term now, or at least I'm hearing it on like TikToks frequently, but I don't think people are using it correctly. So I did just want to clarify what trauma bonding actually means, and then like in
Let
these
us know.
circumstances, if it's like, you know, a shared terrible, like if you work a job and it's like the worst job ever, and like all of your colleagues collectively are just like, this sucks, and then you like become friends over it. Not trauma bonding, but more of this like collective shared traumatic experience that is like helping foster your friendship.
So all the people in Saw, like if they all got through a trap together, that would be collective trauma. I'm sorry, collective bonding, not
like
a trauma
collective
bond.
trauma that they've experienced that they're now, you know, bonding over.
Okay. Fantastic. And so then with this, it would just be more like a collective, like bonding.
Like
we've
both had these experiences in our childhood. Maybe we're also having them into our adulthood, and it's something that has brought us closer together. But also in this case, I think they are technically sisters.
Right.
Sisters?
Yes.
So would you say that Amanda and Jigsaw is trauma bonding?
Ooh, great follow-up question. I would say yes, because I think that, I mean, as much as we love him in which one? Saw 10?
Yes.
Right? Okay. I got Saw 10 and Fast and Furious 10 like did a crossover in my brain really quickly, and I was like, wait, which one is which?
Yes.
Fasten your seatbelts to get sawed.
Yes.
Man, they should do a crossover. What a great idea. I would watch
interested.
that.
Too Saw, too Furious.
The cars are all saw traps. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, copyright. You have to pay us for this. Because I mean, like inherently, like John has power over Amanda. He's kidnapped her, and then like she's developed this weird attachment to him as a result of believing that like he's saved her, and it kind of views him as this like fatherly figure. Unclear if there's like I mean, I guess spoilers for what is it? Saw is it 3 where she gets a trap on her again? I think
maybe.
I think it's the 3rd one, because that's the one where the doctor does the brain surgery.
Yes, that is the one that
So I mean, that is like, you know, more trauma and abuse that she's going through, but like unclear if there's like other things happening between that time. But I would say that's probably closer to a trauma. It really depends on like how often is this like cycle of abuse occurring, because that is essentially what like perpetuates that type of relationship dynamic is it's not always just bad. Like there is this like positive the honeymoon phase, like all of that stuff, the love bombing, all of those things are essentially all the same thing. Where it's like you're getting positive like affection and love and care and support, but then following that is like a period of walking on eggshells, and then something bad happens, and it could be a variety of things, and then it follows up with like the apologies and honeymoon phase again. So like that's the cycle essentially, and it like feeds into itself. And that's why like, you know, people might say like, oh, just walk away from that relationship, but it's way more challenging when you are facing like the positive reinforcement. So I don't want to hear anybody say like just walk away. That is not helpful. That's not supportive to folks who are survivors of intimate partner violence.
To follow up, lastly,
jigsaw violence.
Yes, or jigsaw violence. Lastly, to follow up on the trauma bonding of it all, could a parent-child relationship be trauma bonding as well?
Yes.
Even though they like the child is dependent on the parent, like they kind of have to be dependent on the parent, but they can still have that dynamic of like positive reinforcement, but then
Mhm.
like when something happens, it's
Mm-hmm. I feel like in that case, like that's a well established like power dynamic because it's a child and a parent. And so like
hmm
the caregiver inherently holds power over the child. Like you said, the child is dependent on the parent in order to, be like continuing to thrive. So
yeah,
that like it like the relationships don't necessarily require this like additional layer of having a power dynamic, but like part of what creates that cycle of control is that someone is exerting power over someone else. But like a child and a parent, there is inherently that power dynamic, and so
right,
like
right.
it then I think can not make it easier for that to happen because like obviously not all children are abused by their caregivers, but more so I think that it creates more like confusion around the positive reinforcement that they might be getting because it's like,
Mm.
well, they're my parents, so like they love me, they might like receive affection and then also might receive like this ongoing cycle of abuse. So I think like that then makes that relationship more confusing because it's like, oh, I guess like this is normal. This is what I'm supposed to expect. And
Right.
it's really hard to like disentangle that experience when like maybe if you distance yourself from that person or like go to therapy and you start to like talk about it.
Right. Okay.
Oh, I remembered what the trigger warning was from the beginning of the episode.
What was it?
Please.
Just like protests and things like
Oh
the
yeah.
politics.
Like the politics of the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool.
Yeah, for
Anyway,
sure.
back to brains.
Yes. Well, I just have one more question. I would love if you could talk about uh forgetting trauma
Mhm.
in the sense of Margaret just doesn't remember what has happened to her with the whole impregnating thing, which also is because she was like been drugged,
Mhm.
and all that. But
Yeah.
is it believable that she or anyone in like a similar situation could like forget trauma to that extent to where you have like no recollection of anything?
Heck yeah, because trauma
Okay.
does very weird stuff to the brain.
Mm.
Trauma impacts memory. Like that's a very, very common reaction. So much so that it's really interesting. There's for within like the criminal justice system for interviewing people who have experienced some kind of trauma and are going through the legal system, there's special trainings that like people who like police officers, first responders, things like that can get to learn how to interview that's like more trauma informed because people might not recall information in chronological order. They might not have access to that information for a long period of time because
Mm.
that's part of the impact of trauma. And so like, you know, in some circumstances for folks who are untrained, you might get situations where someone's like, well, then what happened? And it's like, I don't know. And it's like, well, how don't you know? You remember this random thing. But that's really
Yeah.
common with trauma and like how like it can take some time to like regain some of those memories, some of those experiences, because it's like actually rewiring our brains. So like we're not necessarily able to like recall that data in that perfect order because
Mhm.
it's like literally changing the way that our brains work.
That's just always so interesting to me too, just thinking like, we could be walking around with so much that we just don't remember because of how traumatic. And that's scary.
Yes, but I also like I do feel like there are things that we like can feel and like know and experience. Like while yes, there, maybe I experienced a childhood trauma that I have like buried so deep that like I don't even realize it happened. I
Mhm.
think that there are still like let's say it's like an imprint, if you will. Like there are things that might be coming out that could still be connected to that traumatic experience that
Mm.
you may not realize is connected to it, and like through like therapy and like that work you can do can help you make that connection. But that also can be like a really scary and sometimes re-traumatizing thing, is to then discover that you experience this like trauma that your brain has like shielded you from. But yeah, like I think that there's still like, you know, like, yes, post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD like formally requires this diagnosis of like all of these criteria and things, but you could still experience some of those things even if you don't fit like the perfect diagnostics for it. And
For
like
sure.
and also maybe still not be like totally aware of the fact that you experienced a trauma.
Wow. Which again is why therapy is so important, because those things can manifest in different ways, and you just never know how things can be connected. And it's good to have a specialist, an outside third party to kind of
and
help and direct your thoughts.
There's so many like wonderful different trauma therapies now. Like back in my day when I was still in school, like so many of these things were like newer, but like now so many of them have been like, well, they're well researched and like you know, and again like there's so many different things that like benefit different people. Like you don't always have to go the super traditional route, but like I just appreciate that there's like truly so many different like treatments out there that I hope that like reduces some of the barrier for people to potentially get started, is that like it doesn't have to be your traditional talk therapy if that doesn't work for you. And like encouraging people to like, you know, explore all resources, because truly like there's a lot of stuff out there for trauma. And I can only imagine that we're going to continue moving in this direction where there's like even more accessible like treatments offered for a variety of things. So like it's very exciting. Like I'm just on the precipice of knowing like some things. I don't even know all of the things. So like just learning about new things is really fascinating to me.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you for that, Jamie. That ends our brains section. Should we rotten tomatin this?
It's the Rotten Tomatoes game.
I think we should.
Tomatin.
All right. What do you think the First Omen has on Rotten Tomatoes? Jamie, why don't you go first?
I'm gonna guess a 67.
All right. Nikisha, what do you think?
That's funny because I was gonna say 76.
Ooh.
It has an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Nice.
Critics.
The audience score is 70%.
Okay.
All right.
Both fresh. The critics say, frequently frightening, even as it plays within the confines of a nearly 50-year-old film series, this prequel is the first omen of bright futures for a franchise in quite some time.
Yeah. I dig it.
And then the audience says, the First Omen has plenty of scary atmosphere and some great performances, although if you aren't in the mood for a slow burn, the pace might be a deal breaker.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Very fair.
All right, let's move on to Letterboxd. What do you think out of 5 the First Omen has on Letterboxd? Nikisha, we'll start with you.
3.4.
Jamie?
3.1.
3.4.
Ooh, that's the first time I've ever got one.
And here are some of the fantastic popular reviews. From Nolan. All that for a fuck-ass kid named Damien?
Yes.
My personal favorite. Why did this end like an Avengers movie?
We're all together.
Yeah, it's just like, they're coming after you. Do you want to join the team? Yo, Russell Crowe should have come out at the end and been like,
man,
like,
Vespa.
yeah, on the Vespa, be like, join me, the Pope's exorcist, with Father Brennan, and then you bring in. We're watching another one where I thought they were gonna. I forget what it was, what we were watching, but there was another one that I wanted. Oh, in the Nun 2, when they're like, we got to go to the number one guy, and it wasn't Russell Crowe. And this is the number one liked review on Letterboxd of The First Omen. This literally happened to my friend Cecilia a few weeks ago.
That's so good.
Yeah, that's by
That
Tyler.
is fantastic.
All right. Should we do the 4 S's?
Yes.
Skull, scare, shakes, and suggestions. The Talking Horrors 4 S's.
For those of you who don't know, the 4 S's are skulls, scares, shakes, and suggestions. Skulls 1 through 10 is how well did this handle mental health and human behavior. Scares is how scary was it, and shakes is, will this stick with you? Can you shake it off? And then we'll do our suggestions later on. But Jamie, why don't we start with you with your skulls, scares, and shakes 1 through 10?
Sure thing. So for skulls, I am giving this I'm going to change my score. I'm going to give this a 7. Because I think that there's like a good amount of peopling, even if, you know, like Antichrist aside. I think like there are people who hold very strong opinions and like, you know, are able to compartmentalize a lot of things in holding those strong beliefs. And I think that there was some really good representation of compartmentalization in this movie. For scares, I gave this a 5. I think that there was a lot of really unsettling, disturbing things, a couple of jump scares, just like really good, creepy performances overall. And for shakes, I'm giving this a 4. I know that seems kind of low right now. I'm curious to see how, like, we just saw it, so I'm curious to like give it more time and see if it like kind of sticks with me for longer, especially kind of knowing how many, like I said, like how many other highly anticipated horror movies are coming out the rest of this year. Will this one continue to resonate with me, or will I kind of like lose interest as soon as like the next new shiny thing comes out? So
sure, that's fair.
That's my thought process.
Cool. Nikisha?
Yeah, mine are very close. 6 for skulls, for the same reason. 5 for scares. There was a lot of stuff that did get me, but I'm gonna give this a 6 for shakes. It was a good time.
Great. Yeah. I gave this a skull 7. I also gave this a 5 for scares. And I, for the same reasons as Jamie, am giving this a 7, but I'm just going on the other end of that, saying like my shiny luster may go backwards, and I might give it a 5 or a 6 or something like that. But right now, like, I really enjoyed this, and I think this benefits from all the other kind of horror movies we've seen this year kind of being so-so or below average. But I really enjoyed that. And I'm gonna I don't know what House of the Devil is the movie that I'm gonna suggest for this one.
Brian, I'm gonna steal what you said earlier and say Saint Maud, because I was like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that was one of mine, but ultimately this gives me hardcore Rosemary's Baby vibes.
Sure.
This feels like as much as it's like, you know, reimagining the original Omen, Gregory Peck's Omen. This is really, there are so many beats that really felt like Rosemary's Baby that like, yeah, that was like what I was thinking about throughout most of this movie.
Sure.
Fantastic. Great. Well, I think that wraps up our episode of The First Omen. You can follow us on all social medias, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, at Talk Horror Pod, POD. And Brian, where can they listen to us?
You can listen to us wherever you get podcasts. So YouTube, hi YouTube, subscribe to us there. You can also find us on things like Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Rate and review us there. 5 stars, please.
And thank you. How should we sign off, guys?
They gave the boy a name. Simon.
Daxton.
Yeah.
Caden.
Bop it.
Ashley-in.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.